And the European Union has warned that Donald Trump's cuts to various US-funded media companies would risk, quote, benefiting our common adversaries. The White House recently moved to gut the broadcasters Voice of America and Radio Free Europe after Trump claimed they were biased against him. Critics say his administration is abandoning the United States' historic role in promoting press freedom abroad.
After slashing its funding, Donald Trump's administration has started the process of laying off staff at the Voice of America and other broadcasters such as Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, based in Prague. The future of these international bastions of free media is now under threat.
Aus Amerika im Krieg.
Millions of listeners and viewers are depending on information in these autocratic countries, and now they've been left alone by Trump, and it's a huge space now for disinformation, for propaganda, and we will try everything, and I think I can also speak for my colleagues of BBC or France Médias Monde to fill the gap, but the gap is quite big, so I hope that there will be better solutions coming up.
A gap that the EU also worries could be filled with propaganda by governments in countries where free media is banned or limited. At an EU foreign ministers meeting, Jan Lipavsky underlined to his counterparts the importance of keeping Radio Free Europe on the airwaves.
We are talking about Russia, Iran, Belarus and a whole range of other countries to which Radio Free Europe broadcasts. It is a very important institution. If the United States does not want to continue to operate and pay for it, then I think that we in Europe should think very seriously together about whether we are not able to find resources and ways to continue the work of this organization.
The Czech government is urging the EU to help RFE continue its news coverage in countries where it's needed most.
So what does the dismantling of Voice of America and Radio Free Europe mean for press freedom and access to information globally? I put that question to Anja Osterhaus, the executive director of the German section of Reporters Without Borders.
It's a very bad development because it means that many people, millions of people actually, will have less access to free and independent media because Voice of America, Radio Free Asia and others are providing independent news in local languages in dozens of countries and thereby add a very important contribution to information. In some places, it's one of the few sources of independent and free information in autocratic states such as Belarus or Vietnam or Russia and other places. So it's we are very worried about this development.
The EU's foreign policy chief, Kaja Kallas, has said that the EU is looking into how to help, but that it can't automatically provide funding. What would you expect from Brussels, apart from, supportive statements?
Yeah, facts and acts, but the problem is that we have many places where we need to jump in, others need to jump in to cover for what the US has been providing by dismantling USAID, for example. We already lost many funding for many media outlets across the world, and there we also hope and plead to other governments and other donors to bridge the gap, at least for those outlets to become self-sustainable and find other means to resource themselves. And the same actually definitely is happening for free and independent news in these countries. We have other similar outlets, like in Germany, the Deutsche Welle. Of course, that is really helpful, but we also know that that Voice of America is going to leave huge gaps.
Well, that's right. I mean, what about other global media organisations like Deutsche Welle, like BBC World or France Médias Monde? Can they fill the void that's going to be left?
They cannot fill the void, particularly not because it is so quick. I mean, it's so immediate. All these actions by the Trump administration are happening from one day to the other, and gaps or voids that are created so quickly, it's very hard to fill them immediately. But of course, luckily, we have many other similar outlets which are already providing information in these countries. And they are well connected. So wherever they find opportunities and possibilities to come in and fill these voids, that's more than welcome. And of course, the European governments can also support by providing sufficient funding to these other outlets.
After this attack against these media institutions that obviously were broadcasting internationally, what are your thoughts about the freedom of the press inside the US?
Yeah, we are very worried about that. I mean, everybody has been following the developments by, for example, banning the Associated Press because they don't accept to call the Gulf of Mexico Gulf of America. Or we also know about all the insults towards journalists, even to really well-established, highly renowned media organizations. What we can see is that the Trump administration is very interested in supporting media houses that promote their views, that spread their information and their view at the world, and they are really hostile towards critical and independent outlets that might also have a different view. And that is extremely worrying for a power like the United States of America.
Anja Osterhaus from Reporters Without Borders. We'll have to leave it there, but thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And for a closer look, I'm pleased to welcome DW's Director General, Peter Limbourg now. Mr. Limbourg, great to have you on the show. First up, I'd like to get your reaction to this.
Well, it's a dramatic situation and a backslash for free media worldwide. And I would like to send a message also to the colleagues of VOA, Radio Free Europe, the whole USAGM, that the staff of DW and we are shocked about this. And I think solidarity is all we can do now. And we hope that they will get along, and I think it's really sad what really happened to our colleagues, whom we worked closely in the past decades.
What impact could these cuts have, especially in authoritarian countries where freedom of speech is already under great threat?
Yeah, a lot of people, millions of listeners and viewers are depending on information in these autocratic countries. And now they've been left alone by Trump. And it's a huge space now for disinformation, for propaganda. And we will try everything. And I think I can also speak for my colleagues of BBC or France Médias Monde to fill the gap. But the gap is quite big. So I hope that there will be better solutions coming up.
A Trump loyalist in charge of these cuts described the body that oversees Voice of America, among others, as a giant rot and a burden to the American taxpayer. What does this tell us about the U.S. commitment to a free press?
Well, there is not a big commitment to free press from the U.S. government and from the president. What he wants is journalists or so-called journalists who are not criticizing him or his government. Free press is not on his agenda. So I think we should stand together. And there are still a lot of advocates of free press worldwide, but we have to act now.
How can or how should the German or European governments react to this?
I think one has to invest more into international, free and independent public service media, more than we had invested before, because we see that there is a huge pressure on democratic countries on free speech and freedom of media. And even if Donald Trump is working in this case against the interests of the American people because they're losing so much influence and autocrats will jump in, we have to act. And I think this is time now also for Europe to do more for international free media.
Mm-hmm. You already mentioned that DW has cooperated with many of the affected outlets in the past. What do these cuts mean for media organizations like DW who operate in the same regions, in the same space?
I think it's getting more difficult to reach people, and we will try our best. But we also should think about of a lot of journalists in countries of Africa or Asia or Latin America or eastern part of Europe, where journalism is so dangerous and difficult, and this decision will make their life not easier.
That was Peter Limbourg, DW's Director General. Thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome.